Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Annie News. We got even more cut content for the Overlord movie. I want to know how many there's going to be, because this is crazy. I thought this was going to be like a 2-3 video thing. We're on part 6 now, and there's always so much left out. It's unreal, apparently. What's the title of this one? Let's check it. The first time Ainz bowed his head to anyone. Well, that would have been a moment. Let's see what we are talking about.
Out of all the 4 seasons we've seen so far in Overlord, I don't think we've seen Ainz bow his head once.
Why would he? He is Ainz.
This didn't count since it was Pandora's actor, so for him to do so here and to a commoner of all people, well, that's a scene I believe needs more recognition. It was a much bigger deal than how the movie made it out to be.
Hey, I love the art as well. It's so cool. Interesting. Interesting!
Now, we're finally at a point where the cut content isn't so much full-on scenes, but what we are missing is the loads of dialogue and development building the most crucial relationships of the Holy Kingdom arc. Like, you can easily see how with every interaction, Nea becomes more infatuated with Ainz.
Yes.
It's some finer context that makes their whole dynamic that much more interesting. The Squire and the King. With Nea having just defied Ainz with her request for Momon,
Oh, yeah.
Remedios was now giving her the scolding we saw in the anime.
Right, it's like, what are you doing? You're gonna mess everything up. You can't go talking on him.
What we didn't see was Nea's thought process during it, absolute disdain towards her commander who did nothing.
Yeah, because
sure, Nea
didn't he mention that, like, she's going mad. She absolutely hates this woman that's leading them. And I do as well. The more I watch these cut contents, I'm like, she is such a bitch. She is a bitch. She's a bitch.
wasn't prepared for the situation where her death may not have sufficed to appease the Sorcerer King, but it was even with that she fully believed her actions were better than nothing. Remedios clearly wasn't gonna speak up instead, and that was an issue Nea found even more worrisome. Like, everyone knew 3 years was far too long for them. Remedios' inaction may have made it seem like she was fine with it, but to do nothing was the same as condemning all her people to death. That's why Nea believed what she did was right. There was just too much at stake for her not to say anything. Remedios' fit suggested what she did was wrong, though, leading Nea to question whether results were all that mattered. She started to wonder whether the method was just as important too. Either way, the fact a person who did nothing was the one scolding her, well, that just didn't sit well with Nea.
Yeah, it's like, at least I'm trying to do something. You're meant to be leading us, and you're going, yeah, 3 years is fine. Everyone will be dead.
Gustav was far more reasonable, as while he did acknowledge what Nea did was wrong, he also believed her actions were right too. It was for that reason that he suggested they should balance the response between reward and punishment. Praise equivalent to the amount that they scolded her. His praise on behalf of Remedios was immediately clocked as a lie, since the idea Remedios was happy about anything she did was impossible. Either way, Remedios needed space, and Gustav made sure to give her that. He would send Nea out so that Remedios could breathe a bit. It's not like Nea had anywhere to go, but with the 1 gold coin she had, she could at least afford a meal somewhere. So, it was while walking the streets that's where she'd encounter Ainz, or at least his voice directing her to an alley a bit more discreet. It was once there that Ainz would uncloak himself from a veil of invisibility. At first, Nea was a bit frightened by the mysterious voice suddenly projected in her direction, but it was the moment she realized whose it was that she followed it obediently. From here, Ainz's request would be a simple one, the basic action of opening Remedios' window so the two could talk in secret. Of course, Nea's first thought was that this could be an assassination attempt, but if Ainz wanted her dead, she knew he could have just done so when they met each other earlier.
Yeah, like, you can do it anytime. You are no way getting away with anything in this place.
There was also the possibility that this was someone who was impersonating the king, but the presence before her was unmistakable. His magnificence wasn't something she knew could be replicated by just anyone. No. To her, each and every one of his moves could only be performed by someone born as royalty. Still, Nea would consider his request appropriately, then after a short while accept it for what it was. It was before sending Nea off, though, that Ainz would first ask why it was she was out. At first, he thought it was due to some errand, but a confused reaction led him to realize this was free time for her. It was the most precious time Ainz felt the need to apologize for interrupting. Such a reaction was far from what Nea was expecting, startling her due to how out of the ordinary it was. She couldn't believe the kindness with which the king was talking to her. It was as if someone had just applied medicine to a place that was in major need of recovery. Now, it was when Nea went to open that window that, aside from Remedios' natural reaction of anger, the other paladins would reach for their swords out of instinct. That's when Ainz would apologize for frightening them, saying he had no other choice but to meet them this way. Remedios would then kneel along with everyone else, and Ainz would quickly usher them past that. He was clearly trying to get into the conversation as fast as possible, a request Remedios had no problem accepting herself. She did, however, make an effort to exclude Nea, but the moment Ainz questioned why Nea wasn't going to participate, she quickly changed her mind and ordered her to stay.
Brilliant. I love that. Excuse me, why is she not here? I'm a bitch.
It was a meeting Nea didn't really want to attend herself, but she was curious as to why Ainz had come here. The conversation would then proceed just like how we saw in the movie, up until someone as strong as Momon was mentioned. It was before...
If you agree to one condition, I'm not adverse to sending someone else as strong as him right away. Right, okay.
Or asking for the maids, though, that Ainz would first predict their true position like some sort of oracle. First, he would mention how the paladins weren't really a resistance at all. He expertly pinned that they were more just like a small group of armed individuals hiding in caves. This led every paladin to gasp, since his assumption was a fact they knew they could no longer hide anymore. Somehow Ainz had seen right through them. Naturally, Gustav and Remedios would stare at Nea, a silent accusation she could only deny with a headshake. It's then Ainz would go on to deduce more, details very similar to what he mentioned in the cave scene here. He would then talk about the southern forces and how it was unlikely for them to cooperate, citing their deep-rooted issues with the nobles there. It was because of this that Ainz knew they wouldn't be able to offer him privileges, mainly because the new king likely wouldn't follow through on them. Like, even if Remedios requested that king to honor her deal, Ainz wasn't so foolish as to think he would. At best, he would just ignore it, and at worst, total war would break out. It was an accurate assumption that many of the paladins could only be shocked at. The way he confidently recited everything as if he memorized it was amazing. Ainz wasn't done there, though, as he would then discuss the possibility of compensation via Robol's national treasures. He suggested the paladins could just loot the vault themselves, hand it all over to Ainz, then blame the missing treasure on Yaldabaoth. This, however, put all the trust for paladins at risk, something Ainz knew they probably wouldn't want to gamble with. That being the case, the only choice left was for these paladins to appeal to Ainz's emotions, a plan which we know and he knows led them to here. The room's silence was all but confirmation of that, leaving everyone impressed as Ainz just accurately read their circumstances to a T.
He's a genius.
Nea, however, came out starstruck, fully engrossed by Ainz's perfection. Compared to all the royalty she'd met before, this was her first time dealing with someone so superior. From his majestic dignity to masterful discernment, perfection was the only word Nea could describe Ainz with. The impression he'd left on her was one she knew she'd never forget. Now, the cherry on top was the way Ainz followed this up, saying how pretty much anyone could have figured it out. He was basically suggesting it was foolish for the paladins to try and hide their position in the first place. A statement intended to put them in their place.
Yeah, I love it. The way he words things and has times where he just, like, drops specific lines. It's like, ooh, that's a dig. Hey. Oh, but he's right.
Since he needed to make sure none of them thought of him as some sort of short-sighted idiot, he had gone to imply their circumstances were so obvious that even a toddler could figure it out. It was a clever move that immediately established how the dynamic between paladins and Ainz was to proceed. He had essentially warned them not to try and pull a fast one on him. This all took place right before Ainz would ask for the maids, making it a powerful negotiation tactic, placing all the chips on his side of the table. It was once his request for the maids was made after that a bit of confusion would come from the paladin side. Remember, in the novel no one had witnessed any sort of battle maids yet. This made Gustav question whether they were actually there, leading him to ask what they would do if there were no maids.
Oh.
Well, Ainz, knowing they were gonna show up regardless, simply said they'd cross that bridge when they came to it. Should they somehow not show up though, Ainz promised not to make any more additional demands.
Fair enough. They must have been so confused. Like, what if they don't exist?
That being the case, his only other demand now was for anything not clearly belonging to the Holy Kingdom be handed over to him. So, say Demiurge was roaming about with powerful relics, those would go to Ainz instead of the Holy Kingdom.
Right, okay.
Finally was the request not to hate the maids once they were under him, since Ainz wanted no ill will towards future servants of his. Unlike the movie though, this wasn't a request Remedios could just instantly accept like that. No, forgiving those who tore apart her country was difficult.
Oh yeah.
Still, Ainz would request it anyway, suggesting she just needed to work hard in order to convince both herself and the people that things were okay. I mean, it's not like the Holy Kingdom had anything else to offer. They could just blame it all on mind control then see how that turns out. Whatever the reason was, that was for Remedios to figure out after her people were saved. For now, she knew she couldn't push back on anything. She was too worried that doing so might make negotiations fall apart. That's when Gustav would request to discuss these matters alone, taking some time to review his offer in private. Nea fully thought that was a mistake, but Ainz's generosity never ceased to amaze her. What she believed was sure to test his patience was instead met with the same kindness that she received. Luckily, their discussion didn't last long, as in only a few moments they would return stating they would do whatever His Majesty wanted. The next steps were to formalize their contract in writing, something both parties agreed to do later. Now was the time to reveal who it was that was stronger than Momon. Well, after all this deliberation and suspense, Ainz would reveal that that person was him. It was a much more impactful revelation since you were left questioning who for so much longer. The reception to it was exactly as we saw in the movie, except for Gustav, who was pushing back far more than Remedios. He would list out all the issues associated with sending a king as reinforcements, each of which were logically dismantled by Ainz. It was only after Remedios confirmed everything was okay with Ainz himself that she would gladly accept his offer, completely ignoring Gustav.
Yeah.
So, all in all, this was a meeting setting the stage for what was to come next. Ainz had manipulated the negotiations in a way that best suited him and essentially led the paladins to the outcome that he wanted. Nea's first impressions would be solidified too, paving the path for her cult-like obsession later on. Now, there was a bit more to Remedios' justification after, mainly regarding the optimal outcome that could happen. It's not like Remedios was aiming for both Yaldabaoth and Ainz to take themselves out, but if they did, she wasn't going to complain. That much we already knew, but what she went on to mention after was the opportunity which came should Ainz be eliminated.
When do the weapons get mentioned? That's what my brain's instantly just gone to that, and I don't know why, because I thought it was quite a funny little side thing in it, where the mention of, like, was it mystical weapons, or, because he gives her the bow, doesn't he, and then it's making that a point as, like, you know, and then they use that to kill the monster at the end, and then it's like, oh my god, one of Ainz's weapons, you know, trying to, like, use that as a selling point. I don't think that's been mentioned yet.
You see, there was a chance the undead he commanded be set free to cause havoc, leading to an unholy war that the kingdom, the empire, and the theocracy would all have to deal with. The Holy Kingdom would lend their support as well, but as a country not directly bordered with the Sorcerer Kingdom, it wouldn't be an immediate issue like it was for the other nations. That being the case, the Holy Kingdom could recoup their strength while all other nations were dealing with that. It was a potential outcome in which they actually had a lot to gain. The morally gray area on which it was founded, though, is the core reason why Gustav would question it. He saw no justice in killing a foreign king than having a war start because of it. Once again, Remedios would say that wasn't her intention, but she was much less passionate with that statement over her previous ones. To Nea, it was a disgusting look that left her questioning who Remedios even was anymore. She couldn't believe this was the commander of the paladins she heard so many stories about, since, as she was now, this was someone completely different. Remedios would even say that they needed to figure out how to milk the Sorcerer King for all he was worth.
Damn, nah.
A line that clearly didn't resonate with anyone. Everyone was visibly disgusted by the way Remedios was ready to treat Ainz. Still, Gustav knew they needed to take advantage of this opportunity, so rather than bring Ainz straight to the capital and have him fight Yaldabaoth right away, he figured they could lighten their load a bit and hit a few cities on the way. Just retaking the capital would leave pockets of demi-humans everywhere, a threat they knew they'd probably need Ainz for as well. That being the case, they couldn't have him leave immediately after he got what he wanted. They needed his strength for the smaller battles too. So, the plan was to gather allies by freeing the soldiers imprisoned in the camps, then save the fight with Yaldabaoth for the end.
Right.
It was a good idea since Remedios had a person she wanted to save as well. She was looking for anyone who was part of the royal family. Everyone knew the Holy Queen was dead, but with no reports mentioning anything about the rest of the royal family, saving one of them would allow the paladins to bring them up as a symbol and in the process gain the full support of the southern nobles again. Remember, there's that whole political conflict going on in the background. The issues of the south not helping the north due to their dislike towards the Kalka faction. Finding a member of the royal family would remove any of the hopes the south had of gaining the throne again, forcing them to fall back in line as subordinates. Remedios also had the bright idea of saving whatever northern nobles they could too, since despite them not being fond of the Kalka faction either, by putting them in her debt, she could at least leverage them to gain more assistance. There were plenty of northern nobles who had ties to the south, so that was a connection Remedios wanted to take advantage of. Now, assigning Nea as Ainz's aide was a whole separate issue on its own, since a squire serving a king was unthinkable. What he needed was a professional lady-in-waiting, not a low-level squire he could very well perceive as insignificant. Gustav was trying to avoid the potential disrespect of it, but Remedios didn't have the patience to work with some third party she wasn't in control of. She also couldn't be that person herself since she was to be fighting in the front lines. That being the case, it kind of made sense why Nea was the perfect choice here. Not only was she the only available female, she was also the only one either could trust to handle it. Trust might not be the right word in Remedios' case, but that was the least of Nea's worries when it came to a job like this. For now, all she could think of was how impossible this was gonna be. So, while despair was the core emotion she was feeling, at the same time she couldn't help but feel somewhat excited. This brings us now to the carriage ride, where Nea's impressions of Ainz would only get better. At first, every move he made had a strong sense of royalty to it, but the longer the ride went on, the more normal Ainz became. What started out as these rare moments of folksiness quickly became more and more frequent until Nea just assumed he was doing so out of consideration for her. It was yet another act of generosity she could only be grateful for. Nea knew it was all just an act on his part though, since she figured it was only because she was a squire. She assumed if it was a paladin in here instead, then Ainz's demeanor would be a whole lot different. Now, keep in mind the two had been riding together for more than a few days now, so it was only after a multi-day silence that Ainz would finally make conversation.
Oh, damn.
He would straight up...
Oh, God, imagine sat in a carriage with someone with absolute silence, no words spoken. And then...
ask Nea what her story was. To Nea, this was a very vague topic, so Ainz would clarify with specific things like why she became a squire and what her job entailed. The ensuing conversation dealt more so with the events from this scene here, but in the novel it took place in the carriage ride.
Oh, okay.
So, Ainz would come to the conclusion Nea was a rare type of bowman, mainly because she was an aspiring paladin skilled with ranged weapons. Considering the way the archetype was handled back in Yggdrasil, it makes sense that a bow-wielding paladin would seem rare to him.
That's so cool as well, because that's something that, well, this basement recently mentioned in his problem with isekai is that, like, if you make the main character interesting and you let us know what they're like in the real world, or actually have them relate to, like, stuff in the real world before coming in, it adds to it. So that's pretty cool that he's like, do you know what? Back in the real world, when they played the game, that was an odd thing to happen. And he's utilizing it within the world
Nea
now.
didn't see it that way herself, but if being an archer was what Nea was good at, Ainz suggested she keep at it.
Yeah.
Like, with so many other paladins already being skilled with the sword, Ainz truly felt there was no need for another. He would also murmur how weird combinations were the path to rare classes, a reference to Yggdrasil that Nea would assume was just some type of abstract metaphor.
Cool.
It was after this that Ainz would apologize to Nea, saying how he felt bad for how she was forced to look after him. Not only that, but he also felt bad for the others since Nea's skills were certainly more useful on the outside. They were the type of words Nea struggled the most with. This is because Ainz was a king, and it was much easier to interact with him when he treated her like she was lesser than him. For him to constantly treat her as an equal, though, well, navigating that type of conversation was difficult. Nea knew she couldn't let his kindness spoil her like that. It was
You
before
don't forget who the guy is.
she could take a step back from it, though, that Ainz would continue to make it even harder. You see, Ainz really wanted to offer her compensation, but his previous attempt to do so made it clear she wouldn't accept anything. That being the case, Ainz would proceed to offer a gesture instead. Not only would he speak a verbal thank you, he would also bow his head in a display of respect far greater than any gift. This was probably one of the most inconceivable things a king could do, since Nea was a commoner and he was royalty. With his very country existing through him, it wasn't necessarily untrue to think that a king bowing his head meant that his country was bowing its head too. There were rare occasions where this did in fact happen, but never has it happened to someone of such low standing. So this was a concept Nea was fully aware of, leading her to think maybe she wasn't just a normal person.
Yeah.
Immediately she would disregard that, then chalk up Ainz's actions to him just being open-minded. Given what she'd seen before, she didn't put it past him to thank regular people like her. She just didn't think it would be to this level. So, it was after taking a moment to register the surreal sight in front of her that Nea would quickly usher Ainz's head upward. She probably should have done so as soon as she could, since if anyone else saw this, there'd be an uproar. She would then pledge her loyalty just like how we saw in the anime, bringing their conversation back to
but it was still in the carriage. Ah, it's so weird that they changed it.
Nea's story. With quite a ways still to go before reaching the Paladin's cave base, Ainz now wanted to know why attaining Holy Knighthood was her goal. He wanted to know why she didn't want to be a ranger, as well as the reason for which she fought with the Paladins. The explanation was rather simple, and it was mainly due to her mother being a paladin herself. Ainz assumed it was because her mother was a good role model, and he fully believed that she was the one pushing the paladin mindset on her. In actuality, though, Nea's mother was the one always saying not to be a paladin.
Oh.
She wasn't even that good of a parent, barely capable of doing laundry and basic mending.
Oh.
It was her father, Pavel, who always cooked and did most of the
What
house
dirt.
chores, leading Nea to think that that's how it was in every household. Ainz then made the assumption that Nea's mother was at least good for not stopping her for when she wanted to become a paladin, another incorrect statement on his part. Reason being that when Nea finally revealed that that's what she wanted to do, her mother immediately brought out a sword and challenged her to a duel.
Oh.
Her stance was that if she could defeat her, then she would allow it.
Jesus Christ.
Of course, such an outcome never happened, and the only reason Nea was able to become a squire anyway was once again due to her father. He had jumped in order to shield Nea, saving her from the beatdown that was sure to come from this duel. In fact, it was during it that Nea had for the first time experienced the intent to kill. I don't think her mother was planning to follow through on it, but I can sort of get why she'd want
What's
to
that
shock Nea
from?
by having her experience it, especially if her goal was to make her not be a paladin. Ainz would then ask why Nea decided to become a paladin anyway, first questioning why she didn't follow her father's footsteps. It was a question Nea didn't really know the answer to herself, but she believed part of it might be because of how she resented him for giving her these sinister-looking eyes of his. Children would often mock her for always looking angry, then whenever she came home to complain to her father about it, her mother would always smack her across the head if she heard her.
Aw.
Of course, now she knew just how much of a gift these eyes were, but it's unfortunate her parents weren't around to see that. It was when Ainz proceeded to ask what they were up to now that Nea would reveal how her father died on the wall with Yaldabaoth and her mother she'd lost contact to during all the battles. She assumed that she had died protecting the city. She was, after all, the type to resist to the very end. It was after hearing this that Ainz would bow for a second time, flustering Nea yet again. His reason was because he found it inconsiderate for delving into such a personal topic, but
Like an
I imagine
apology,
his
yeah.
apology might have involved more than that. Since this is told from the perspective of Nea, though, the only inner thoughts we get are hers. And here in this moment was another round of how impractical it was for a king to bow his head to a commoner. This is when Ainz would pull out the bow, but considering how that segues into the beginning of the counterattack, I think it's best to end things off
My
here.
God, Ramon.
We'll cover that and all the planning in the next video. This was just a lot of cut content building the characters and their relationships.
I'm hoping we get like the talk of the, because we've got the bow now. But that was a funny little side bit within the movie that I appreciated, where it was like, you just knew Ainz was trying to like plug people to buy these mystical weapons and that. So I'm hoping we get a little bit of that in the next one. But yeah, interesting little tiny changes with like the outside the carriage when he's bowing and giving her the bow, but that in the actual original source material, in it, inner mind workings and thoughts and things. It's cool. My God, I can't believe we still got more. But we will check it out when it's out. Thanks for watching.